Hi all, so welcome to this new event organized by Fidelio, reinventing the food and beverage industry, innovation, supply chain and labor. So I see you all coming in. Let's wait just a bit before welcoming our speakers. And so you have two things to know about this, the option you can use. You can chat, it's a chat button. You can switch from host and panelist to everybody, so everybody can see your message. Don't hesitate to use it and tell me if you can hear me well, see me well. And then you have another option, it's called Q&A. So you can ask questions to our speakers and it's gonna be easier for them to answer. You can also vote and comment other people's questions. So please use this during the webinar. And now let's welcome our speakers. Please, Cora, Jennifer, if you can join me. Have a nice conference. And Dyson, hey.
Hey, thank you, Ben. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on leveraging effective communications to create an attractive workplace culture. To begin, I would like to thank Fidelio for providing the opportunity to hold today's session, as well as our great presenters, Cora Brady, who is partner and president at the advertising agency Bob's Your Uncle, and Jennifer Griffith, executive director at Food Processing Skills Canada. Thank you both for volunteering your time and for putting together this informational session. As I suspect most of you know all too well, Ontario is facing an intensifying labor crisis within the industry. In just 5 years, it's expected that the industry will be facing up to 25,000 job vacancies due to retirement of an aging workforce and a growing challenge in attracting and retaining both skilled and frontline job seekers. Modernized employer recruitment and retention strategies have been identified as critical to attracting and retaining an essential workforce now and in the future. This is why I'm excited to introduce today's session, which will be the first in FBO's 4-part series on workplace and cultural development. Today, you'll learn how to use effective communications to promote an employee-centric work environment that can become a powerful tool in attracting and retaining essential frontline agri-food professionals necessary to your core business. I'd like to recognize that FBO's Workplace and Cultural Development webinar series, including today's session, is funded by the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. In a moment, I'll pass it off to Cora to begin her presentation, Branding from the Inside Out, after which Cora will hand things over to Jennifer to cover the foundations of employee-employer communications. Throughout this session, you'll be able to submit comments and questions in the chat box and the Q&A box, both located at the bottom of your screen. So please be sure to submit questions through the Q&A box rather than the comment box, so they may be addressed during the presentation. Thank you, and I'll now invite Cora to take over.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to get going here. Something that I think about, which is branding from the inside out, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that, and just give you a couple of theories and action items that could help you start perhaps thinking about your organization a little bit differently. The first question I have here is, do your employees fully understand your brand and what it stands for? I mean, really, you could take a step backwards and say, do you fully understand your brand and what it stands for? And there's no shame here. We are, I work for an advertising agency. We do branding for a living. We help brands build, from scratch or reinvent themselves. This is what we do for a living. And we don't have it solved. We're constantly working on our own brand and asking ourselves questions. So by no means, there's no simple, kind of shortcut to this. I think that's important to understand. What we're ultimately looking to do is have a great workplace culture for ourselves and all of our team to attract new talent and to retain talent. But it does take work, and it's kind of a constant thing that needs to be looked at and continue to build on, or everyone would have an amazing culture. We wouldn't have any of the challenges that we do have that we're facing today. But it, if done right, it can be really, really powerful, and actually make your life easier when it comes to what to say yes to, what to say no to, what to do and what not to do. I think that's really exciting part of this, to just really have a framework as far as how you behave as an organization, and communicate that with your team. So first kind of theory here is a brand is a lot more than a communications idea. It's actually a behavioral framework. It's how everyone should understand why they're doing, the purpose behind it, the vision behind it, and how you're rewarding people. And every member of your business really needs to be engaged. And so just to kind of think about where we've been and where we are now, in the past, we have business strategy, and then we have all of these different departments that are operating behind to meet the business strategy, and marketing specifically is focused on the brand strategy. And that is in the days of, we will tell people what our brand is and why they should care. And so in this case, branding is more of a communications idea. The way we need to look at it now is that we have our business strategy, and directly related and parallel to our business strategy is our brand strategy. So it's more of a behavior that we are setting out for our entire team across every single department. So thinking about how finance does their job, how HR does their job, how every single group does their job needs to kind of ladder back up to what are our values. A couple of really, kind of little examples there is we're an ad agency. A lot of agencies, it's kind of what you do is you do timesheets, and everyone has to do timesheets to try to understand, the value of their time and the cost of projects to clients. But one of our values is embracing simplicity, and our people hate doing timesheets. It's just kind of the bane of their existence and the least favorite thing of their day. So we just decided to, get rid of that, because if we're really truly wanting to embrace simplicity, and that's not something that is their core strength or what makes them excited to get out of bed every day, then let's just figure out another way. There's got to be a better way. So that's something that we changed. One of our other values is imagination. And it's really truly like ideas can come from anywhere. Imagination is important to what we do and being successful. But we kind of extended that to something that we call side hustle days. So we implemented a side hustle day for 1 per quarter. So 4 throughout the year for every single employee, that they could just pick a day. They don't have to report back to us on what they did during that day, but really was to just recognize that, hey, we have a bunch of really imaginative, creative people in this company. And so, it makes sense that they have other things going on in their lives, whether they're gardening or whether they like to volunteer or whatever it might be, whether they do have a side business and they're, that we can just recognize that and kind of embrace it and give them a day every quarter where they get to just sign, check out and focus on other things. So it's a little thing, but it really does recognize that it's core to our values, and it recognizes that there's other things going on in their lives. So there's just a couple of examples. So 3 things that I'm going to go through on how we can build that culture and really energize our employees is becoming values-led, helping your employees understand your brand, which is your values, and building an employee value proposition. So that's what I'll go through now. I'm not a fan of a lot of words on slides, but we're going to go through this quickly because we do have an action-packed day today. So I wanted to make sure that there were words on slides. So if I kind of fly through this, you have the chance to read and think about it a little bit more on your own time. I will just pause for a moment, Dyson, if there was any questions that you're seeing. think we're good.
No, I don't see any questions yet.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just keep going. 10:10, there you go, make a wish. I'm just checking my time here to make sure I don't go over. So becoming values-led, really the basis here is that employees are your strongest, most visible ambassadors, and they truly can help you attract new talent, retain talent, but they need to understand those brand values. So the theory here is that brand values are guiding principles that direct your brand behavior in any given situation. So the opportunity for you here is maybe you have values, maybe you don't have values. I mean, I'm sure you have values as an individual and as a company, but maybe you have articulated them and maybe you haven't formally articulated them. So if you haven't, I think, depending on the size of your company, get a group together, shortlist brand values that you think are important, put it up on the whiteboard and talk about, what the values mean, evaluate them as far as, how they will help you deliver on the experience that you want to be present. If you don't have them, if you do have them, there's always an opportunity to evaluate them. Think about what you have and dust them off, and think about if they're really helping you to be a better company, if they're helping you to reach your vision. Don't be afraid to adjust them if you need to. We just adjusted ours about 6 months ago. It just felt right. At first, it was like, oh, I don't know, because we talk about them so much, but it did feel right to just kind of focus them a little bit more. And then when you land on one, so the example here is, if it's innovative as a value, ask how that applies to every employee's role. And ultimately, obviously, ensure that leadership are really leading by example. So when you're talking about, when you're coaching, when you're presenting to the team, always come back to your values and try to ladder all of the conversations that you're having to be under those values. And the benefit really is a like-minded workforce that are really committed to living and breathing your values. So here's an example. This is Bob's Your Uncle. This is us. One of our values is embracing simplicity. So our values need to be simple. And the next example is not the most simple. So it's just kind of wanted to give you two different versions of how you could approach it here. But we get together on a Friday at the end of the day, and we prior to COVID, we all stood around a room. Now it's on some in a room, some on video. Still works, but we go around the room and just do a quick 3 things you accomplished this week and a shout out to somebody in the company related to one of our values. So specifically, picking heart or imagination and just telling a little story about somebody who really stood out to you in the work week. But embracing simplicity is one of my favorites, because we really just constantly, anything that we're doing, could this be easier? We try not to use too many acronyms and talk over people's heads. Every single way that you do things, there's an opportunity to think about, bringing that, simplifying that. And I won't speak to all of the others, but Starbucks is an interesting one. Obviously, they're a massive brand, so don't roll your eyes. Or you're like, oh, we're 10 people and you're talking about Starbucks. That's not my intention to use a big brand, but I just think that they do a really good job. And, even when you go to Starbucks Instagram, under the profile, it doesn't say we serve coffee and tea and snacks, and we have 1 billion locations across the world. The profile literally says, we inspire and nurture the human spirit, 1 person, 1 cup, and 1 neighborhood at a time. So they just bring everything back to this. And as you can see, their values are totally different from the Bob's Your Uncle ones that I just shared with you. They're longer form. They've got a lot of kind of thoughts in each one: acting with courage, challenging the status quo, and finding new ways to grow our company and each other. That's one of their values. So different approach, still works. And I think the nice thing about having it a little bit more written out is it's less subjective. As you saw in my example, there is a line under each one to make sure that people are clear on what we mean. But there's no wrong way. It really is what feels right for your company and ultimately what is digestible for your team. Helping employees understand obviously is the next step, because having them, stating them, painting them on the wall is all great, but people do need to understand. So really here it's, it's telling stories. Like I said, our Finish It Friday meeting is each individual telling a story and giving a quick shout out. It's a 15-minute meeting with 20 employees, just giving, ending the week off on a really positive note. But there's lots of different ways that you can do that. But I do think being really people-centric in the way that you tell those stories is important. Storytelling is very memorable and it works. So just thinking about, how you can, if you have an employee of the month, how are you really presenting that to the team and making sure there is a bit of a story behind that and making sure it's laddering back up to your values. So it's just this constant thing that people are kind of associating with and thinking about. You could put it on your website. You could have your values there. You could have some stories about employees, ultimately educating your existing team. Also, this serves to help when onboarding new recruits. Our values, I lead with our values when we're pitching new business. And when I'm, talking to potential new employees, it's always values led, because ultimately I want to attract them, but I also want to make sure that they're the right fit. Last one is building an employee values proposition. It's a long term, and I said I wouldn't use acronyms, and there it is, EVP. But it is something that a lot of companies talk about. It tends to be a little bit more HR centric, but this is just expanding from your values just a little bit broader. So this is describing the mix of values and benefits and ways of working in your organization. So as a more holistic, in a simple way, it really is the commitment that you make in a contract with, as an organization, an employee in return for their performance. What are you providing for them? So I think it's really important to have a good sense of what that is. And you may know it and someone else may see it differently. So it's interesting. It's like that elevator pitch, like making sure that everyone is on the same page as far as how you talk about that proposition and why it's a great place to work. So lots of words on this slide. Again, I'm breaking my rule of embracing simplicity, but given that I'm about to hand over to Jennifer to go through a whole different kind of part of this presentation, I did want to make sure that you have just some thoughts about this and really quickly, understanding your people. Like don't assume that you understand your people or make an assumption for them. It's really important to talk to people and think about what really is important on an emotional and functional level. And you may be surprised about why some people are attracted or happy in your workplace. And of course, it's important to hear the other side so you can make change. Looking at your competitors. So that's important too, right? If you have really clear competitive space, then look at what they're doing and their shortcomings and differentiate. So somebody that's having an interview at a couple of different places in a similar industry, you want to stand out. So do a little bit of an evaluation, talk to people and find out what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. And then looking at the top reasons why people, I think I already spoke to that, really love working for you, but what they need and just make sure it's tangible as well as intangible. So there's, of course, there's salaries and perks and things like that, but that just can't stand alone. As we know, people want purpose. They want to feel a sense of belonging. They want to feel a sense of accomplishment. So think about the company culture and progression opportunities. And think about things like, if you're hiring people who are juggling kids, like think about a perk that you could give that maybe other people don't give, like my side hustle days. It's something that people remember, and recruiters are like, oh, I love that. I can't wait to tell people about that. That's just cool. It's 4 days, but it's more the thought behind it, where we're like, we totally respect that you're out there with stuff in your life that has nothing to do with here, and we want to give you a little bit of time. So it's like a simple thing, but it actually has a lot of meaning. And then bringing it to life. So be proud, put it on your website, tell those stories, publish it, paint it on your walls, do all of those things to make sure that people are living and breathing that every day. In summary, just really thinking and refocusing your brand on those principles with people at the heart. Engaged people is going to lead to your success, and they'll be your ambassadors out there. Values are super important to have the right fit, and not just to retain, but to make sure you bring in the right people, and overall just making that a bigger conversation in your organization. That's me. And I'm going to stop sharing so Jennifer can start sharing. Unless did you want to stop for any questions, Dyson, or should we keep rolling?
We don't have any questions just yet, but why don't we circle back at the end of the presentations to see if anyone's got any extra questions.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Good stuff there, Cora. I love a lot of those components in terms of branding and communicating and bringing the storytelling, I think, into your organization is really important. Being able to share your own experiences, I think, with new hires, those coming on board, really building those relationships. We have a staff probably of about 25 or so folks at Food Processing Skills Canada. And our philosophy more is a family-oriented environment, very much open door policy. You don't despise your small beginnings on where you started, being able to share with all levels of your staff, your story, where you began and so forth. I worked at McDonald's for 4 years, from ages 14 to 18. And I could say that was some of my best development and training that I received even up to this day, in terms of bringing forth some of those skills to what we're doing. So, it's not despising where you start from, but really embracing that and feeding that into the work ethic, into your workplace. So I love a lot of those pieces, good nuggets that Cora gave us. So we're going to go through probably some more practical sides of communications, and we want to focus on really this whole feedback. This has been something that we've been working with a lot of organizations or food manufacturers and their supervisors directly, who are on the production floor or supervising, from the office levels. And there's various levels of supervisors, and dealing a lot with emotional intelligence and the feedback, the OFTA feedback model that we have. So just some 5 basic steps to communications culture. So the foundation, good communications boosts performance. Communicate openly and regularly, everywhere and with everyone in your organization. So if, communications was a heavy weight on your shoulder, you'd have to get rid of it. So you want to be able to pass that information forward to your employees, keeping them informed of what is going on. Driven by vision and goals, which you heard from Cora just now, demonstrating the values that drive your company's missions, your goals, and so forth. Diversity and inclusion, that is becoming huge everywhere that we are. And a lot of that links to, promoting empathy in your workplace, compassion, really understanding, not assuming things that you may have not seen, and really being able to implement those recruitment strategies in your organizations of being diverse and inclusive. Coaching and mentoring is also really big. That's a whole nother component on its own, but that really helps, I think, to develop your employees and your individuals. So keeping that at top of mind is coaching and mentoring. And then what we're going to focus on today is the feedback. It's the OFTA model. So it's observation, feeling, and thinking. And the action around that. So providing and receiving feedback is at the core of communication skills. And we're going to see that based on the use of emotional intelligence. So one thing we've embarked upon, within our industry and sector a few years back, through a few of our programs, was really tackling that area of social emotional learning and skills. We started off providing this types of training to the general public and individuals who we were training up to work in our industry, to build that pipeline of workers. Because as you know, we're short of so many individuals, and we're trying to provide the best skilled individuals that we can. But we know a lot of that work has to start with ourselves and how to understand our emotions and how do we handle those emotions and how it affects us at the production level, at the workplace, regardless of what industry that you're in. So we've developed a whole curriculum around that, which is now part of the Skills for Success model as well, that you might know, with your core workplace essentials that's needed, right? Oral communications, job task planning, thinking skills, reading, writing, numeracy. They're now embedding the emotional intelligence skills there with that as well. So what is emotional intelligence? It is an ability, right? So that is why we can learn it. We can grow it and foster it with practice. So it's the ability to identify emotions in ourselves and others, understand and manage our emotions with others, building those relationships, and then communicating those emotions effectively, and being self-motivated and committed to your goals. So we have this emotional intelligence structure that we use within our organization. And with the industry, we've developed a whole bunch of curriculum that goes along with that. So feedback is the breakfast of champions. Ken Blanchard is a leader in leadership and development, and he says that's a super important piece here. Sorry, my slides jumped around on me. And why is feedback so important? Giving feedback, it's a gift. When well done, proper feedback helps us grow. It improves and understands how our actions and behaviors impact others. So managers and supervisors, we have an important role in giving your employees the feedback that will help them develop their expertise and work in more collaborative and agile ways. This is just one of the ways in which managers play an indispensable role in your organizational success. So 96% of employees said that receiving feedback regularly is a good thing. How often do we do that? Most managers, I don't think, enjoy necessarily giving feedback, but it turns out that employees love receiving it, and how we give that feedback, I think, is key. So feedback is all about changing behavior, and the closer you give feedback to an event, the better it is. Delaying that feedback, maybe to an annual performance may be too late, because then the event may have already happened or been forgotten. So let's go jump into our first poll here. I'll ask Dyson to get going for us. So the question is, how frequently do you give feedback to your employees? So you have some options here: once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, once or twice a year. Not sure. All right.
Okay, maybe we'll give it 5 more seconds.
Yeah. So common seems to be once every 2 weeks, once a month.
Okay.
Apparently, I'm not allowed to participate.
Okay, so why don't we end it on that poll there?
Yeah, perfect. So
There's your results.
So you guys are in the right vein. I believe you had majority said kind of once every 2 weeks, once a month. You'd be looking for that feedback. So the research shows that obviously we would like, employees would like to receive feedback on a regular weekly or bi-weekly basis. How often are they receiving it? Maybe 20% of the time. Then it went to monthly. Then you have managers who are providing that feedback more often, but annually, I know that's kind of was the trend back in the day. You still have your performance and annual reviews and so forth, but that time is definitely way too long. That's something I personally, we don't practice as much as annual reviews. I do that on a regular basis and try to provide that feedback right away, opposed to waiting and letting things fester or just passes by and then you don't address it. So giving that feedback right away, I think is very important. All right, where are we at? 10:30, so about 10 minutes here. Try to scooch by these components pretty quickly. So there are two types of feedback that we can do: constructive feedback, positive or negative. We're trying to get away from that word negative. So we want to use corrective feedback. So giving recommendations as corrective feedback can be powerful if done right. It matters how you say things by being empathetic and kind, especially when giving corrective feedback. So we'll learn more about this a bit later on. So trying to catch people doing the right things. And if you see and observe those areas of improvement, don't hesitate to give corrective feedback. It's the way that we give the corrective feedback. So if you have someone who's arriving early to work and they're preparing for their shift, or an audit, recognize them, for that. You're observing it yourself. You notice that they're making that extra effort and coming in, early, or maybe they've stayed late to get out an extra shipment. Appreciate them for their diligence and focus on that positive feedback. And that doesn't necessarily just have to be for your employees, but that could also be for your peers as well. And then if you do notice something that needs correcting, maybe there is a staff member who's coming regularly, back from their breaks. Maybe they're not washing their hands when they're supposed to before going on to the production floor. Maybe instead of addressing it right there with them at the hand washing station in front of everybody else, you pull them aside and, make that corrective action or try to impact that behavior so that doesn't happen again. So is there a right balance? How often should you give positive feedback compared to corrective feedback? So if we can launch the poll here as well.
Of course.
That would be great. So would it be, one positive comment and then one corrective comment, 2 to 1, 3 to 2, 5 to 1? What do you think the balance would be here?
Got our first answer in.
2 to 1. All right. Well, the answer is 5 to 1 is the magic ratio. So 5 positive comments to 1 negative, or we shouldn't say negative, corrective action. So for every corrective feedback you give, you need to share 5 positive comments as well. Why do you think it's important to give more positive feedback? So positive feedback can motivate people to continue doing what they're doing well and do it with more vigor, determination, and creativity. So we'll go quickly just through this model. I know time is running on us. So how to give effective feedback based kind of on emotional intelligence and feedback. So you have observation is number one. Then you have your feelings, thoughts, and your actions. So when you observe, then you can accurately, determine, we can feel, think, and act based on what you're seeing. So the feedback model allows you to prepare and deliver feedback in an effective manner, so both positive and constructive, which considers both thoughts and emotions. So you start with observation, so not judgment. So there's no judgment. It's all based on what you see, hear yourself. So no rumors there, or basing what you're going to respond on based on something you've heard from someone else. So the second part of the feedback is to consider your feelings about what you observed and expressing them in a calm manner. The third is considering and expressing your thoughts or logic about what you observed. And finally, actions or request, which is where you invite the other person to recommend actions or ask them to do things differently in order to improve their performance. So as supervisors, you provide, or managers, you provide feedback to improve performance, you change certain behaviors. Your feedback should never sound as an attack on the person, otherwise it will become counterproductive at the personal and professional level. So if you are doing something without observing it, or you're responding or reacting, that means we're doing something based on our opinions. So if you give feedback to someone based on a rumor, it's not facts, and you saw or experienced it yourself. So this is opinion-based feedback and would not be fair for employees. It becomes a personal attack. Always base your feedback on behaviors and actions you observe. So or properly documented with witnesses. Otherwise, wait till you get more of the facts based on that topic you're trying to address or deal with. So I'm sure there's tons of situations that you can probably think of where, you may have had someone else coming up to you saying, oh, I saw so-and-so do this, or this staff member did that. And, they want you to react on that or provide some sort of disciplinary action or react to it. Lots of times what I do, I want to see that for myself. We want to observe it before addressing it. So we aren't just, basing our opinion, those decisions on opinions of others. So when you have no thought in that process, feedback with no thinking is logical. So you may have observed something, there's feeling to it, and there's action, but without consulting or communicating our thoughts, this is when we take action without thinking about it. So maybe you snap at others without thinking about it. So what you're saying that it's all based on your impulse and feelings at that moment. So we all know that impulse and feelings can create certain outcomes that, that may not have been the best decisions to do that. So feedback with no feelings. So you're a logical thinker only. When you do that based on logic, it's more robotical driven action. So the difference is us as humans, our ability to feel and consult your feelings. So it's all about having this right balance, I think, between thinking, you have your thoughts, and then feeling certain actions, and you're not coming across too harsh, and maybe building your skills and trust with your employees in that area. And then without action. So if we're observing something, we're understanding the situation, we're thinking about it, but then we're not acting upon that. I think that definitely shows a lack of, then we can be an absent leader when we're not providing those corrective actions or giving that positive feedback. We're seeing everything, but then we're not doing anything about it. So we want to be able to also act upon what we're seeing that is positive, and what we're seeing that also needs correction. So we want to avoid, not hearing, no seeing, not saying anything. But as a leader, we don't want to be like the three monkeys here. We don't want to not listen, don't take action. Emotional intelligence feedback balances feeling, thinking, and producing actions and improving performance. So here are just some of the questions that you can think about when we think about this feedback model. So what have we observed our employees doing? How do these observations make us feel about the employee's performance? What do these observations make you think about the employee's performance? And what actions do you recommend to the employee to continue to elevate their performance? And what actions do you commit to taking to support the employees? So that's a quick kind of synopsis of the feedback model and what we've been doing in terms of developing supervisors in the industry. We've been having webinar sessions, discussions with hundreds of supervisors in this area. They're seeing the changes on the production floor. They're realizing they need to communicate better and provide that feedback. They're actually applying it and trying it with their production line workers, with management as well. And they're seeing the difference. They're seeing the effectiveness on the floor when just tweaking, something small like giving more feedback, whether it be corrective or positive, but just thinking about the way we react to certain questions or situations and providing proper feedback has been key. So thank you very much. I know we're running close on time and we have about 4 minutes left. So yeah, we're open for questions. Thank you.
Okay, just as a reminder, the Q&A box is just located at the bottom left there for anyone who wants to submit them. See if anyone has any questions.
Great job, Jennifer.
Yeah, good job, Cora. Thank you.
It's in my head, it really is a very good reminder for how often we give feedback versus how often people want it, and what holds people back. If it feels like a chore, like what is that? And I think simplifying that with the example of our Finish It Friday, it's just so everyone's doing it. So it really is truly, even that is feedback in front of everyone, right? That's different than direct and a little bit more personal, but thinking about ways that it can just be so, ingrained.
Yeah, I think the practice of it is key, right? And then just making it happen and making it not feel forced either, right?
Exactly.
Doing it to get a certain response, right? We try to manipulate sometimes those emotions or feelings and so forth. But yeah, it's pretty good.
It looks like we don't have any questions. But Jennifer, would you mind just bringing up the last slide of your presentation for me while I just do some closing remarks for everybody?
Sounds good.
There we go. Okay. All right. Well, that about wraps it up. So thank you, Jennifer and Cora, for your presentation. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. Before we conclude today's session, I'd just like to remind everyone that the Workplace and Cultural Development webinar series is a new addition to FBO's comprehensive workforce strategy to alleviate the sector's labor crisis. FBO is committed to supporting Ontario's processors in attaining and retaining employees by delivering highly accessible and effective initiatives like the Careers Now program, which offers job seekers free job-ready skills training, access to recruiters and employers through job fairs, and insight into the career pathways through mentorship. If you'd like your business to participate in one of our job fairs or mentorship sessions, or if you'd like to connect with job seekers through our Careers Now employer portal, you can do so by visiting foodandbeverageontario.ca/careersnow. Thank you once again to Fidelio for the opportunity to hold this session as part of today's online labor conference. I hope you'll stay online to join some of the upcoming sessions they have in store as well. As a small housekeeping item before you do go, I ask that you please keep an eye out for an email you'll be receiving in the next couple of minutes, asking you to let us know how you enjoyed this webinar. The feedback will be used to guide the development of future sessions as part of this webinar series. And that about concludes it. So thank you once again to all of our presenters and Fidelio for this great presentation. And also just to note that the recording will be made available.
Thank you. Thank you to FBO. I saw Chris online there, the executive director. Thank you so much.
Jennifer.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Cora. We appreciate it. Thank you very much also, Dyson. Great session. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, and see you in 15 minutes for the next conference. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.